the Major to Career panel hosted by the Center for Career and Experiential Education. My name is Dr. Weinkoff. I am a professor in the Department of Psychology here at URI. My pronouns are she, her, and I want to let you all know that this panel is being recorded. I want to start by asking each of our panelists to please introduce themselves and let us know what your current position title is. Michaela, how about we start with you? Or Shaylin? I think we just lost Michaela.
Hi,
So
everyone.
sorry.
My name is Shaylin Shorter. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
And Allison?
Hi, my name is Allison Wisher, and I am an Area Director of Treatment Coordination at Seven Hills, Rhode Island.
Awesome, thank you. And Michaela?
Hi, I'm Michaela Gonzaga. I'm a user experience researcher at Meta working on AI topics.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I really appreciate the three of you joining us today to share your experiences with our students here at URI. It's really going to be great to hear from all of you. And I would like to start maybe in the same order that we heard you introduce yourselves. If you could tell us a little bit about your journey from your graduation at URI to where you are now in your career. Maybe let us know what position you started with and how you entered in that role.
Yeah, so I graduated from URI in 2019. And throughout my entire undergraduate and graduate career, I actually worked at Bradley Hospital as a behavioral health specialist on the CAD unit. So I was working with kiddos that have autism and other developmental disabilities. And while I was working there, I also did get accepted into my grad program, which was 3 years. And after I finished and graduated with my master's in social work, I was actually offered a job on the children's partial program, also here at Bradley. So I've been at Bradley for about 7 years now at this point, and I've been working as a social worker for the past 2 years.
That's awesome. So I also want to just note real quickly for students, as you're listening to our panelists, if you have a question, feel free to type your question into the chat, and we'll make sure to address those questions as time allows. And then we'll have some time, hopefully at the end as well, if you have questions. So write things down as they come to mind. Okay, thanks, Shaylin. And let's move on to Allison. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from graduation at URI to where you are now?
Sure. So I graduated from URI back in 2013. During my senior year at URI, I started working as a behavior specialist for an organization that provides services to children with disabilities. In that role, I provided one-to-one behavior management support to children with cognitive and behavioral challenges. The children I worked with had diagnoses that ranged from congenital hydrocephalus, autism, blindness, and deaf and hard of hearing. Initially, I had wanted to work with adults when I left college, but after sort of having some experience in working with children, that was sort of the path that I went down, seeing their potential for growth. It just sort of caused me to change my mindset entirely. After gaining that necessary direct care experience, I was promoted to a treatment coordinator role. That has been the bulk of my career experience, where I have provided case management services for families who have children with disabilities. After COVID, that kind of forced me to pivot a little bit differently. So that's how I ended up in my current role, which is Area Director of Treatment Coordination. Right now, I'm responsible for supervising 9 clinical treatment coordinators who collectively provide services to over 300 families across the state of Rhode Island, and they manage approximately 125 direct care staff that work in the homes. I'm really responsible for the financial and operational security of our home-based programs, working closely with our senior leadership team.
Wow, you've been busy. I do want to come back after Michaela introduces herself. I really want to hear how COVID has impacted your career trajectory for all three of you. You spoke to that a little bit, Allison, so it comes to mind. But before we go there, Michaela, tell us a little bit about your journey from graduation to where you are now.
Sure. So I graduated from URI in 2018. My first job out of school was at a UX consulting firm based out of Columbus, Ohio. During that time, I got to travel the country and the world, working with Fortune 500 companies like Chase, Honda, Abercrombie and Fitch, Ford, and a dozen other companies. But I focused on innovation and creating products like apps, websites, cars, and a lot of more things, digital experience mostly. But I was there for 4 years, and all of the experience I accumulated as a consultant really set me up to be a solid candidate for working like directly with the company. So at that point, I started shopping around for a new job, and I was hired at Meta, where I'm at currently. I've been with the company for 2 years, and throughout that time, I've been working on privacy, security, trust and safety topics, and most recently, AI topics.
Ooh, those are big topics.
Definitely.
So back to you, Shaylin. I'm really curious to hear from you. First of all, how your degree here from URI helped you in the position that you started in and where you are right now. And then also maybe tell us a little bit about what it was like to go through COVID shortly after you graduated and enter the workforce.
Yeah. I think my coursework at URI really did help. I actually came into college as a kinesiology major. And I remember sitting in an intro to psychology course, and I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do. So I shifted gears, became a psych major, and everything that I learned, I still apply to this day. So all of your psych classes, I did minor in human development, and family studies, and so those were really helpful as well. Um, and I think just networking with like different professors, attending events such as these so I could see, how people did use their degree was really helpful. So I definitely credit my experience as URI as really setting that solid foundation for my career. And shortly after I graduated, I was in my second year of my grad program. The world shut down because of COVID, so everything was virtual. I was still working at Bradley throughout that time. I was considered an essential employee, so I was going to the hospital every day, masking, but it definitely really did set the stage to, how much of an impact the pandemic had on children, with them being out of school. So we did notice there was a rise in the acuity of the kids that we would see. So I got a lot of experience in a really short amount of time. I'm always joking with my supervisor that I've only been licensed for 2 years, but it feels like 20. So I think it definitely had pros and cons because I was able to get that really unique experience. And, I think it really did affect and impact people on all levels.
Were there classes for you or experiences you had while you were here at URI, internships maybe that you found to be really helpful?
Yeah, I actually did an internship with a direct care agency. So I was able to get my supervision hours that way. I think abnormal psychology was the one class that like I continue to utilize today. And I remember like the way my professors would talk about it. Um, and I think just really the advice that I got from professors, building those really strong relationships because I do have those ties to the community and alumni. It can really open the doors for pretty unique experiences.
Awesome. Thank you, Shaylin. Allison, for you, are there classes that you remember or internships or any of the experiences you had here at URI that you felt really contributed to your success or that made you a competitive candidate in the market?
Absolutely. I'd like to echo what Shaylin had mentioned about the abnormal psychology course. I feel like that one, in addition to the developmental psychology course, it was definitely useful and beneficial. as well as the quantitative methods in psychology, because our data and the collective approach that we use, it's very data driven. So we're always looking at, the functions behind behaviors, but as well as like the frequency of behaviors and how often they occur and that sort of deal. So I feel like those were definitely beneficial courses. As far as the internships, I actually didn't participate in one while I was at URI. That was because the agency I had been working for wouldn't have counted towards that, as I was an established employee. I think since then the internship parameters may have changed a little bit. I did complete undergraduate coursework with a professor at URI, Dr. Ted Walls. And I also facilitated a teacher's assistant course with a professor as well as part of my kind of undergraduate work experience. But I feel as though those experiences were definitely useful in the career path that I've chosen.
Awesome. Thank you. And speaking of data-driven courses or positions, Michaela, I imagine that you spend a lot of your time dealing with data. So I'm wondering what classes you took as a URI student or internships or experiences may have been really helpful and maybe make you a competitive candidate.
Sure. I apologize in advance. My Wi-Fi is quite spotty today, but I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be a part of 2 research labs while I was in school. So throughout all 4 years, I participated in research. That was key to me landing a job out of school. I cannot emphasize that enough. Just having that like hands-on experience really made me a solid candidate to get a job out of school. So I also had a bachelor's of science in psychology. I know the program offers a few different types of degrees. I think that also quite helped a lot. But the research in and of itself was the thing that got my foot in the door. So I would say if you can, look for a professor who's running research, one that you like, tap on them, ask them what they're doing, try to get involved, because that really changed the entire trajectory of not only my career, but my life. Very instrumental to my path, so.
Awesome. I think that's really great advice. I talk about both the teaching assistant positions and the opportunity to work in a lab as being super essential, not only to just kind of help you bring to life stats, or development, those concepts that you learn in a textbook really do become three-dimensional when you have those internship experiences and lab opportunities. So it's really great to hear you guys talk about how they really did pay off for you when you went into the workplace. So thank you for sharing that. I really think probably one of the things students really want to hear is what it's like in the day-to-day, of your positions. So, and I would imagine they're all very different. So, Shaylin, can you tell us a little bit about what a day in the life of your position is like?
Yeah, absolutely. I work in a partial program at Bradley Hospital. So it's a day program. The kids get there at 8 o'clock in the morning and they leave at 2 p.m. So they're able to be managed in the home. It's not an inpatient hospitalization. But the focus is really on the dual individual and family therapies. So currently, as a full-time clinician, I carry a caseload of 4 patients. So I will see all 4 kids every single day for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what their needs are that day. And then for each child, I also meet with the family twice a week. So a lot of individual therapy, and with kids, you kind of have to be creative. A lot of them aren't just going to sit on your couch and tell you how they're feeling. So it's a lot of games, and trying to be creative in the ways that you get them to talk about, why they're there. And with the family meetings, it's a lot of helping parents, develop those concrete strategies that can help to support their child and prevent any inpatient hospitalization. So it is a really intensive program. We do ask a lot of the families and the kids that come. But it's super rewarding seeing like the progress from day one to the day that they leave. In the grand scheme of things, the program is really short term. On average, kids are only there 6 to 8 weeks. So we set a really good foundation to continue the work after our program. And we work with agencies in the community to refer for aftercare. But it's a lot of, I work in a multidisciplinary team. So there's psychiatrists, other social workers, psychologists, occupational therapists. So it's been really helpful getting to have those team meetings too and see how each discipline can approach a situation and, kind of how we all work together for a common goal to make sure that our kiddos stay safe and, they're able to function in the community.
Thank you. I love that. I've heard you several times now refer to the kids as kiddos, and it really kind of suggests that there's a connection there, which I think probably is super rewarding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe
Yeah.
one of the reasons you got into this field, right?
100%. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. I'm so excited for you. That kind of work probably also lends itself to some challenges. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the things that are a little difficult.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is, families get referred to us for a variety of different reasons. And sometimes the families aren't as engaged as we would like them to be. Um, or, they're not really following through with any recommendations and they're just kind of going through the motions. I've had my fair share of difficult cases where, I've had to make calls to DCYF due to, allegations of abuse, which I think is the hardest part of my job. I think, in order to be a social worker, you have to build that trusting relationship with not only the child, but the family as well. And sometimes that can put a wrench in things. I am a mandated reporter, so I have to report these things if they do come up. But, as you can imagine, the families aren't super happy about that. And, there's also those really sad cases where, at the end of the day, some of these kids are really sick and our program, might not be enough for them at that moment. So having to refer to inpatient hospitalization, which is usually really hard, or, sending kids to a residential facility, which, is what they need, but it doesn't make it any easier.
For sure. Yes. We definitely know, we talk about this in classes, you probably heard it when you were an undergrad, and that is that, working in roles such as clinical work, that kind of hands-on work can be incredibly rewarding, but the burnout rates are, something to be considered, to concern yourself with, right? To really think about, like, do I have the personality designed for that? That I can really manage that and gain the satisfaction that comes with that kind of career while also balancing those challenges.
Absolutely. And I think Bradley is really great in taking care of their clinicians, especially with the pandemic there, the burnout rate was incredible, right? So I work with a team that, we all work together. I make sure I take regular vacations and time off. My schedule is really flexible. So once the kids leave at 2 p.m., I usually, am able to work from a coffee shop or, just finding those little things in my day that, make it a little easier. And having a team where everyone is super supportive is definitely helpful as well.
Awesome. You mentioned self-care, and I want to come back to that because I talk about self-care in my classes, especially when I'm teaching positive psychology. Self-care is important. It's crucial. So thank you for sharing that, Shaylin. Allison, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about a day in the life of your job and your workplace, and then maybe some insight into what you find really satisfying and challenging about it?
Absolutely. For me, I am constantly in meetings. I maintain a biweekly supervision schedule with my direct reports. And during those meetings, we review their caseload and discuss any challenging cases that they may have. As Shaylin has kind of highlighted, you from a clinical team perspective, you're constantly dealing with challenging clients, challenging families. So a lot of what I do is offer support and supervision to my clinical team in terms of how to navigate some of those more challenging conversations or difficult situations. I also have regularly occurring meetings with other departments for collaboration. So I work really closely with our HR, recruitment, and billing team. When I'm not in meetings, I'm usually working on financial and data collection reports and reviewing clinical treatment plans. I field phone calls from my team members as needed, as well as from other providers such as Bradley. We constantly get a lot of referrals from them for our home-based services after they're ready to leave the partial program and return home. So we're definitely busy kind of working on those new intakes. I occasionally do receive phone calls from unhappy parents who, are airing their grievances about, something that may have happened. So having to navigate those challenging conversations, I've had to deal with a couple of those today. It's just kind of been one of those weeks. And every once in a while, I enjoy a break from the meetings and attend a career fair with the recruitment team, or maybe facilitate a presentation about our organization, as I've done for URI in the past. So I do kind of enjoy doing that as well. In terms of the most rewarding part of my role is probably being able to ensure that my clinical team has the resources that they need to provide the highest level of care, making sure that they have the equipment that they need, the access to resources and other providers that they may need. I also love when the team can come to me and share success stories about their clients, because I am a little like one step removed from the client care while I'm not working with clients directly anymore, but supervising the team that does work with the clients. I really do get excited when somebody can call me and say, hey, I've got a great, story about so-and-so, they've been having a hard time. Here's a great success story. That is something that really just brightens my day in between the monotonous meetings that I'm in, just trying to make sure that the program is running. And I think in terms of like challenging, it's probably the staffing crisis. While our clinical team is fully staffed, we consistently have vacancies for the direct care staff positions, though behavior specialists or direct care workers that are vital to providing the in-home supports for the children in our program.
Yes, indeed. We hear a lot about shortages these days, so it's not surprising to hear that. And thank you for sharing that, Allison. So, Michaela, you're back. Can you tell us a little bit about a day in the life at Meta, in your position in particular, and then some really fun and challenging things, as well as the rewarding things that come with your career? Yours is like so different, right, from our other two panelists. So you're really giving us a different perspective of what you can do with a degree in psychology.
Yeah, I want to empathize at first and say that I didn't even know this field existed until I had my first job out of school. So it's definitely something that I'd love to. Right now, no 2 days are the same. I apologize again if my internet goes out. It's giving me some feedback, but no 2 days are the same. My job is to run research. So what research to run, when to do it, how long it'll take, and even what it will be about is always changing. Some months I don't run any research at all, so I'll just use past research to help product teams figure out problems or build something new or make something better. But overall, every day is definitely different. I will say meetings are pretty consistent in corporate America, as you might imagine. So I'll have at least 1 or 2 hours of meetings a day. That's a light day. But I work from home. So some days I'll go to a coffee shop or I'll work by the beach. I live in LA, so I have that luxury. But it really varies. I will say when I'm running research, it's incredibly hectic. I'll have 6 to 8 hour days of interviews. So every single hour, I'll be talking to a new stranger, asking them about their life, their experiences, the product that we're working on. So it varies quite a bit. But overall, it's always meetings, at least a couple of them. Hopefully I didn't cut out there.
You are cutting out a little bit, so but I think we were able to hear most of what you said. I'm curious, so you've talked a lot about like products and things that seem kind of abstract. So I'm wondering if you can give us a little more insight into what those products might be without giving away any secrets.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to talk about what I do at Meta in particular because I work on privacy, security, and AI topics, AI being like the big, hot topic right now. But I can talk about some of the stuff I worked at as a consultant. So one project that I did, I was working with Ford to build like their first application to connect people with their cars. And that is like a very technical space, right? Like engineers don't know what people need from an application that's going to connect them to their car. So they look for people like us who have psychology degrees and information and insights on people and how they think to help guide that experience. So what I did was I ran a 6-month research study in Germany, Seattle, and Arizona. And I basically sat with people at their dining room tables for 3 hours, and we built out the entire idea of what it looks like to have a connection to your car on your phone. So it was looking at like what are the features that includes, what are the benefits of those things, what are the desires and the motivations that you have. So, you know, if someone says, well, I wake up in the morning to go to work and it's really cold outside in Germany in the wintertime, so I want to start my car remotely. It's my job to gather all that information and then distill it into insights and then provide that to the team to help them understand what to build. But being a psychologist and psychology background, it's incredibly important to build that rapport with people, be able to make them comfortable, ask the right questions, understand what to dive into. So yeah, that's just one idea for what I've done in my career so far.
I love that. So you did a lot of traveling initially, you said, which sounds, I think, for many kind of like romantic, you know, the idea that you get to travel for your work. And maybe some of our students are thinking that that sounds really cool. So I'm wondering if you can speak to the idea of, you know, traveling for work, the challenges, the rewards that come from that kind of a career.
This is a really good question. I've never been asked this before. First off, I'll say being fresh out of college at 21, it was romantic. It was the thing that, you know, that everyone wants to do, I guess. And it was great. And I enjoy it and I would do it all over again if I could. To this day, I would still like to travel more. But what I will say is that it pushed my boundaries a lot because you're alone. When you go somewhere to Berlin, like, or to LA, I traveled here quite a bit, which is why I moved here. You're with your colleagues and you're with you could enjoy like social time with them, but really it's about finding who you are and understanding who you are and navigating that. As someone in your early 20s, that was a challenge for me. What I will say is also traveling so frequently is kind of isolating. So every 2 to 3 weeks I was in a new city, and that in and of itself made it hard to kind of like put roots down and have like a consistent friend group and all of those things. So navigating that was definitely a challenge. What I will say though is that it was also incredibly thrilling. I've gone to so many places. I've seen so many things. I will say you also get like food and travel for free, and like where I was staying was all free, and I was also getting paid. So it was all great. But after 3 years of doing that, I was burnt out. I felt like I had no consistency. So it was January of 2020. I got back from an international trip and I said, I don't want to travel anymore. And I got my wish because COVID happened. And so I didn't have to travel. And I regretted making that statement, but we were able to do some things to pass the time and to travel eventually once things lightened up. But yeah, it was a great time. I would recommend it if you get the chance to, but it definitely has its drawbacks. And it was a lot of time, a lot of hours, long hours, all those things, but I would do it in a heartbeat.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So one of the rare instances where we can say something good came from COVID.
Maybe.
Maybe. So I want to switch topics a little bit. You know, when we survey employees or employers, I'm sorry, out in the workforce, you know, to really kind of understand how we can prepare students to make that transition from college into the workforce. One of the things that we hear a lot about from both employers and employees these days is the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Students more and more are entering the workforce with a really keen desire to work for companies that embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to your organization's commitment to that, or maybe your experiences about how you navigate those questions. Like, it's one thing for a company to post on their website that they're committed, is another thing to walk that walk. So what have your experiences been, and what can you share? What wisdom do you have for our students?
Yeah, at Bradley, there's actually a committee. It's called the SIDE committee, which stands for Strengthening inclusion, diversity, and equity. So this is exactly like what we're doing. And I joined it as soon as I was hired as a social worker. So it is a committee that's made up of clinical staff, so social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, and we do accept input from the direct support staff. Because those are the ones that are working directly with our patients, who many of them do come from diverse backgrounds. And, we're kind of recognizing that, the clinical staff isn't as diverse as, we would like. So one part of the side committee that, I've been really working on is kind of recruiting more clinical staff from diverse backgrounds. So whether that's racial, sexual orientation, disability status. And that way we have these really amazing discussions on how we can make not only our kiddos feel safe and accepted, but the staff as well. So we have these really great discussions every month. We put together events. We recently just finished our event where the staff could bring in a dish from their country. And so we had like a taste testing event that the staff and the kids participated in. So it was really fun. So, we really strive to make it a place that is so welcoming, especially on the inpatient units where, the kiddos are away from their homes. And it's really hard for them to feel like they're still a part of their culture and their background. So that's definitely a priority. I think especially after, the George Floyd and, people getting killed. I think Bradley definitely made a pivot and was like, these aren't things that we stand for, and trying to make it a better place for not only staff, but the kids as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to hear that that's actually happening. So Allison, can you speak to your experience?
Yep. I just want to take a moment to kind of mention that Seven Hills, Rhode Island is part of the Seven Hills Foundation. So we actually have 15 affiliates between Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. And across those 15 affiliates, we have 235 locations. And of those locations, I think we employ somewhere around like 5,000 employees. So we're a rather large organization, and with that, we sort of did a study of where do our employees come from. And we found that within our agency for Seven Hills, our employees come from 57 different countries. And with that, bring, a richness of diverse backgrounds, talents, and experiences. We've always had the philosophy that our cultural competency as an agency does not begin and end with recruitment of like bilingual staff. It's so much more in depth with that. We have a diversity and equity inclusion council, probably a little bit similar to what Shaylin had just explained that Lifespan does, but we include our direct care staff as part of that council. We also recently hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion belonging director, Jacob Kelly, who will be sort of leading our foundation forward into, working on these important initiatives. As a side note, we also have something called the Seven Hills Global Outreach Program. And within that program, we provide support and services to 17,000 women and children in developing countries. So we have work that we do in countries such as Africa and things of that nature, and Puerto Rico. So we kind of have this global outreach, as well as we're so focused here with what we do in the Northeast. In our foundation, we kind of have that, worldwide approach as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. And now on to Michaela, who comes to us from Los Angeles, my hometown.
No way. I love it here. I've only been here for 5 months, but it's definitely my favorite place yet. But yeah, I can speak to what I've seen at Meta. So every team that I've worked on has been filled with people from all walks of life, including like diverse ethnic backgrounds, varying gender identities. So for what I've seen firsthand, it's incredibly diverse. What I've appreciated the most is that I work with people from all different types of educational backgrounds, people with computer science degrees, psychology degrees, public policy degrees, even former middle school math teachers. I kid you not. So when you walk around a Meta campus, it really does feel like walking around New York City. I don't mean that like to be like jokingly, like truly no two people are alike. Everyone has their own style, their own personality, and there's very much a celebration of all backgrounds. And that's even all the way down to like the food. So seriously, every campus across the world, every single day has a menu from a different country. Thai, Ethiopian, Portuguese, French, Japanese, it changes every single day. And the food staff is so intentional about showcasing dishes from cultures around the world. It really comes from wanting people to feel like they're at home. We have a lot of people from a bunch of different countries around the entire world who come to America, especially to work at the company. And so that can be very isolating, but it's also great from a company perspective in that we do have such diversity. But what they really try to do is include people as much as possible, include their cultures in like the physical presence of campus in order to try and foster. But it's really cool, and it's definitely a part of everything that we do.
Love it. Thank you so much. Those answers were so heartwarming. I love to hear that there is actually, progress being made out there in the workplace, and that you can see it happening in your own positions. I'm wondering, I have a couple more questions for you. The first one I want to ask you is, when you first started college as a freshman, did you foresee the place that you are right now? Is it very different? Is it exactly what you thought? How did that happen? I mean, so many students, are still trying to explore what they want to do, and that can be really stressful. Maybe they, are considering changing majors, that kind of stuff, right? It hasn't been all that long for all three of you. So I want to, just share with us, like, what did it look like when you were a freshman? Is it different from where you are now?
Yeah, I kind of touched on this before. I came into URI as a kinesiology major. I wanted to be a physical therapist that worked with athletes. I come from a family where, my dad played football. I come from a very athletic background. And then with taking the kinesiology courses, I realized like my heart wasn't in it. It wasn't something that I was passionate about. I think we all have been there where you have an 8 a.m. class and it's just like, I don't want to go. Um, and so once I took that intro to psych class just as one of my prereqs, and I was so interested. I remember sitting in class on the first day and I was like, I don't want this class to end. Like this is what I like, it just sparked something in me. And I think the fear of changing my major did hold me back a little bit. I didn't change my major until the second semester of my sophomore year. So I was taking like summer classes and trying to catch up, but once I did that and I found out what my passion was, it was like a weight was lifted off of my shoulder. If you would have told me in 2015 when I started college that I would be a social worker, I would have been like, I don't even know what a social worker is. My understanding was that it was somebody that, takes kids away from their families. And that is not at all what we do. We really that's the last thing that we want to do. Um, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I feel like I needed to go through that process in order to truly appreciate where I am now. And one thing that I really liked about URI and the advisors is that everyone was so supportive. And it's okay not to know what you don't want to do, right? I think you learn that by being able to experience different things and really getting your feet wet and finding out what's your why, what's your reason. And the best place to do that is in college because you're surrounded by so many different people, so many different opportunities. So, really taking advantage of what's offered to you. But yeah, I did not expect myself to be here at all.
Such great advice. Thank you, Shaylin. Allison, how about you? Is this where you saw yourself when you came in as a freshman?
No, absolutely not. When I came in as a freshman, I knew that I would want to pursue a degree in psychology. And I also was involved in the pre-health program at URI as well. So I was taking some of the medical school prereq courses because my goal was, maybe to go into medical school. Once I had graduated, some life circumstances happened for me, and that didn't quite, end up where I wanted to go. But when I look at where I've, kind of where I am right now in my role. I definitely saw myself sort of going the social work route as Shaylin did. I think it was the natural, progression of my career course to once I graduated, from URI and had some of that direct care experience, I'd, then pursue my master's. But in my current role, doing a lot more with the operational responsibilities and the financial sustainability, I'm definitely, more inclined to return to school for something like my MBA and kind of pursue like a chief of operations officer type role, as opposed to the social work. I can still be involved in the work that we do in supporting the clinical team, but from a more financial and operational standpoint. And that is not where I would have seen myself ending up, considering the fact that most of my career has been spent working directly with children and their families. And as much as I do love and embrace the work that I've done throughout my career, I've definitely, in this current role that I've been in for a couple of years now, have seen my sort of focus and desire shift. So, I think that while we enter college, we have these preconceived notions of what we're going to do for our major. But I think it's important to kind of be flexible. And even when you leave college and you have your degree and you have this idea of what your career path is going forward, that even, different circumstances or different roles may come up and change your trajectory completely.
That's such a good point, Allison. And I'm thinking, you graduated from URI in, did you say 2018?
2013. So it's been a while. That's why I have such a lengthy career history to kind of speak on, as opposed to, Shaylin and Michaela, who graduated much more recently than I did.
Yeah. Well, I think that your experience and what you were just sharing really kind of speaks to the idea that career exploration is not something that just ends when you graduate, right? That it is a process as long as you're open to that process. And the idea that you can spend some time in a career and then reflect on that time and then maybe go back to get a graduate degree to supplement, the experiences you've had and really kind of push you in another direction, maybe. I think that's just beautiful, right? The idea that we're not set in stone when we leave college. We can really continue on this path of exploration and growth, right? Thank you so much for sharing that. And Michaela, for you, did you think as a freshman that you were going to be where you are now, working for Meta, living in LA, spending a few years traveling? I mean, your career path to me is like one of the challenging ways some students struggle to see how psychology can connect in so many different ways, right? Like most students, or many students anyway, come in thinking psychology is where we help people. And we do that in really direct ways, like therapy, counseling, clinical psychology, working in environments like we see Shaylin and Allison working. But there's this whole other avenue, right? Or series of avenues that you can traverse with a degree in psychology. So maybe you can speak to that, where you were as a freshman, where you are now, and how that kind of played out for you.
Yeah, I can say, like everyone else here, I did not expect to be in the position that I am today. Just for some background, I was an inner city kid in Providence, Rhode Island. I was born to two immigrant parents from a tiny island off of the coast of Portugal in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And I never even saw myself going to college. It didn't seem like something that was even possible for me. So to say that I could see myself here was just not possible. It was not physically possible. What I will say is that when I got to URI, I was undecided. I always knew that I was interested in psychology just from like a personal perspective, but I was not ready to commit. It took me 2 years to actually declare my major. I did all the classes for psych in that meantime, knowing that I was going to do it eventually, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And definitely didn't see myself in the position that I'm in today. So what I can say is that I just took everything one step at a time and I followed the things that interested me. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a 5-year plan. I still don't have a 5, 10, or 20-year plan. I could switch careers. That'll probably happen at some point in my life. But truthfully, I think it's about figuring out what you're interested in, because that's what's going to keep you going. And that's what's going to keep you finding opportunities that will get you to the next thing that's interesting to you. I'm trying to think about the other parts of your question. What I will say, and I don't know if you're gonna get to this later about like what you wish you knew before graduating, but the thing that really matters to me, or the thing that's taken me as far as I think I've come is that I have had to really build up a belief in myself. Like I mentioned, I came from a position where I didn't see opportunities for me. So it was really easy to look at everyone else who had maybe more than I did, or who had a better plan or a more straightforward path that they were going to traverse. And it was easy to get down on myself and to feel like, oh, I'm not sure if what I'm doing or where my life's going to go or what I'm going to do after college. There's all these unknowns. But I think following stuff that you're interested in, having the audacity to try, and then also believing in yourself and building up that belief is really crucial to just traversing any path. I think the three of us could say that for everything that we've done in life. It's really made the difference. And so even though I haven't, or I didn't anticipate myself getting to this point, I've been able to get to this point by truly learning about who I am and what it looks like to forward my sense of confidence and my sense of self.
So many words of wisdom, you three. So many words of wisdom. Thank you. So let's shoot that question over to Shaylin and then to Allison. We're gonna lob it over there. So what is it that you wish you knew before you graduated from college?
Yeah, I wish that I knew that it's okay to not have a plan and it's okay to change your mind. I've always been that kid that had a 10-year plan, and when things didn't go according to that plan, I would think that I was a failure. And letting yourself know, like, college is really only the beginning. Like, it's really up from there. And college is a place where you should take advantage of all those opportunities to really discover, kind of to echo what Michaela said, to discover like what drives you, what you're passionate about. Because the real world is hard, you have to like pay bills, and sometimes being an adult isn't fun. But if you wake up every morning and you're passionate about what you're doing, it just makes it all the more worthwhile. Um, and just really taking advantage of like those connections that you make in college. I still talk to one of my professors to this day. She's one of my mentors. I'll run things past her. And so like that networking is really important. I think sometimes it's more about not what you know, but who you know. I don't think I would have gotten the job at Bradley right after graduation if I hadn't already been working there and really gotten that experience and knew, kind of how the ropes worked. So take advantage of all the opportunities that you come across, because they will pay off.
That means so much more coming from from an alum. You know, yes, faculty, we can talk about that a lot, but hearing you talk about the value of those connections and the networking is really awesome. Thank you for pointing that out. How about you, Allison? What is it that you wish you knew before you graduated from URI?
I think I would just kind of reflect on what I had touched on earlier about how, our career paths are not really set in stone. I'd also like to echo what Shaylin had mentioned in terms of like the connections with faculty members. It's because of the connection of the professor that I had mentioned earlier on that I conducted undergraduate research with, who kind of connected me with Kristen. And from there, we've been able to foster this nice relationship, and it's led to kind of internships at our agency to kind of help, offer opportunities to explore the direct care work in the work that we do at our agency. So it's definitely been very beneficial. But again, I think that there's a lot of opportunities out there. Again, like as I mentioned, like I previously looked at maybe becoming like a social worker. That was just sort of the natural career progression for me. It's not where I'm at today, and it's not really what I'm interested in at this moment. My career interests have definitely pivoted, and there are a lot of different opportunities out there. And even when you're out there job seeking, I think that it's important to take advantage of like opportunities and interviewing everywhere that you can. Actually, I had the privilege of interviewing Shaylin for one of our clinical positions at my agency, and we would have loved to hire her, but I know that we couldn't compete with Bradley. So, I don't blame her for wanting to stay there. But again, just kind of taking advantage and even looking, like while we're established in our roles, like there's other opportunities out there. Like, could there be something else that we could do? Just kind of being informed and again, having those connections and just seeing what's out there.
Awesome. Awesome.
Can
Well,
I say one more thing? Is that okay?
oh, sure. Yes, absolutely.
I just want to like
Oh, we lost you there for a minute. I don't think we heard anything. You're frozen, Michaela. Maybe if you turn off your video, we might be able to hear you.
I think I'm
Ooh,
back. Can you hear me?
now we can hear you.
Okay, let me know.
That's better.
I delayed
Oh,
it also.
yeah, we're not hearing you.
I'll send it over chat. No worries.
Thank you. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, because I'm sure whatever you have to share with us is going to be valuable. Thank you so much. So we just have a few minutes left. I would like to kind of open the floor for our speakers to maybe share some last things that we haven't had a chance to touch on, and then also some questions from students if we have any of those. Shaylin, do you have any last words that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think URI was one of the best experiences of my life. I still have my solid friend group from college. Like I said, I still talk to a lot of my professors, and I think it really set the foundation of, what life looks like after graduating. So, I can't echo enough, like really take advantage of all the opportunities that URI can provide because they will really take you far.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Allison? Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just go ahead and echo what Shaylin had mentioned about, just URI and the opportunities and taking advantage of those as well. In addition to the careers that we currently have, there's other opportunities for growth. And I apologize, I have two dogs in the room with me who have been quiet this whole time, but have now decided to bark. But also kind of, taking advantages of like volunteering their time. So like one of the things that I do is I serve on the president of the board of directors for an organization with a cause that's important to me personally. It's something that I enjoy doing, and it's great resume builder as well. So I know one of your earlier questions kind of asked, what specific skills or work experience, help make candidates competitive. In addition to the actual work that we do, the paid work that we do in our careers, there's also other opportunities to kind of capitalize on those skills and have different experiences through volunteer work or internships or things of that nature that are worth exploring as well.
Awesome. So true. Thank you, Allison. Michaela posted in the chat, so I want to read her words of wisdom and optimism for everyone. She says, "You will never feel like you know enough, and you might never feel good enough or smart enough or eloquent enough, but no one does. And anyone who thinks they are is delusional or is lying to themselves. So believe in yourself. I know that's corny, but find the audacity to try. People get to where they are because they have the audacity to put themselves in a position to receive it." Well said, Michaela. Thank you so much. Looks like we have some questions. So for Shaylin, would you be able to talk more about a career as a social worker outside the misconceptions that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, like I said, I had no idea what a social worker was when I started school. And when I was in undergrad, I thought I was going to go on and get my doctorate. And I remember one of my professors was like, "You should go get your master's in social work." And I was like, "What the heck is social work? Like, I don't want to take people's kids away." And with doing more research, it's really couldn't be further from the truth. We really take the stance that, a person operates in what we call systems theory. So they're the product of their environment. So we really try to look at, all the different pieces, like the family systems and, schools, like with working with kids, like school systems, everything that will impact that individual. And we try to identify those barriers that prevent people from operating at their highest selves. Um, so it's so rewarding. I think there is like that misconception of being a social worker. So with kids, I kind of just call myself a therapist. I feel like that more closely aligns with the work that I'm doing right now. But social work as a whole, it's such a diverse field. I could pivot at any time, decide I want to work with adults, or if I wanted to, I could take the more macro route and really work on like the policy stuff that impacts the families that I work with. So I'm really glad I chose this career. I don't think I would have chosen this career if it wasn't for my professors. but it's so rewarding. And if anyone is interested, I would 100% recommend in going the social work route.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question for you, Shaylin. Brianna asks, after switching your major your second semester to HDF, were you still able to graduate on time? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I actually graduated a semester early, but that's only because I took J-term classes, summer courses, and that's just like my own stuff. I just really loved school, and I just wanted to find stuff to fill my time with. Also, I like to stay on campus during the break, so I was just like, let me take a class. But I did graduate on time, and the advisors are super helpful. So if you have any questions of like worrying if you're not going to, those would be the first people I go to. But yeah, I had no issues with graduating on time.
Awesome, thank you. Do we have any other questions? We're almost out of time, but we have a few more minutes if anyone has a question. If there are any questions after we conclude the Zoom, how do we address those questions? Kristen, can you help me out there?
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, they can always reach out to me, but I am going to send a lovely thank you note to our panelists and CC our faculty that have championed the students to attend. A lot of them are going to be watching a recording or are here with us today, so they can always reach out to their faculty as well. But I'm always your first line of defense as well, so I will put my email in the chat in the event that anybody like to reach out. I'm always happy to connect our students to our alum or our employers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been incredibly informative. It's been great to hear from Shaylin and Allison and Michaela. I really appreciate you, all three of you, taking time from your day to come and share with our current students. Hopefully our students found it to be really helpful. Oh, I have one more. Are any of the alumni open to taking students for shadowing opportunities? Ooh,
Putting you guys on the
what do you
spot.
think?
That
Yeah,
is something that I would be open to. Absolutely. I've mentored some students in the past, and it's something that I'd be willing to explore again.
awesome. Be a little tricky to have Michaela shadow people, but Shaylin, is that something that's possible, or I know
I
it can
would
be
have to
tricky.
check. I know because of like all the privacy stuff with our patients. But I know we do have an internship program. Um, I believe it's for bachelor's and master's level. So you would have to go through Bradley, but I can definitely pass along the contact information to you, Kristen, if people are interested in pursuing that.
Awesome, great question.
Yeah, that
Thank
was a
you.
great question. Oftentimes shadowing opportunities are not advertised. So that's where our panelists had talked about is putting yourself out there. And the worst that someone can say is no. So just go on to the websites and look at people and their jobs and, email, ask those questions and see if there's something that you can make happen. All right. Well, thank you so much,
So
everyone, for
true.
your time. Our panelists, we appreciate you. I will stop the recording now.